It seems a resume and job references just aren't good enough anymore. Some employers are asking would-be workers for a trial shift just at the chance of landing the job. Stephanie Matisse put this story out there this morning, and since you did that, lots more stories like this came rolling in.
So many people emailed totips@cbc.ca to tell us similar stories. Many of them involve the restaurant industry. It is illegal. You have to be paid for those types of shifts. People were describing, being asked to come in for a stage where it might be a part of an interview process. But again, if you do something like that, you have to be paid. All of this started with one woman's story, Stacey Feldman, who talked about what happened to her.
I was asked to come back at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Stacey Feldman was vying for a job as front of house manager at a local restaurant. She made it through the first interview and then asked to come in for a trial shift.
I was a waitress and a dishwasher and bartender, you name it. It was the whole kit and caboodle.
Feldman worked at the restaurant near Bloor and Bathurst until 4 p.m. A week later, she received an email saying she didn't get the job, but no mention of compensation.
When I replied, I said, well, congratulations, I'm glad you found someone. Please see the attached invoice for my work.
When she didn't hear from the restaurant, she wondered whether a tryout like hers didn't have to be compensated.
A lot of people came back and said what they're doing is illegal. I too have been involved in this situation and so forth.
Unfortunately, that is a story that we hear all the time at the Workers' Action Centre.
Common, especially in the restaurant and cleaning industries.
People being asked to try out for jobs, work maybe a couple of days, a week, sometimes even a month before the employer will say, sure, I'll take you on. But that was training and I'm not paying you for training, which is of course completely against the law.
Why did you decide to do this interview after all? You said it was resolved, so why?
Because I feel it's important that everybody knows what's going on out there, and at least if you're in this situation of being interviewed and they ask you to come back, that you at least get your ducks in a row.
Under Ontario's labour laws, whether it's a trial or not, you must be paid for those types of shifts. And the only time it's unpaid is if it's an internship, and that's for a school course credit, Dwight.
Okay, so now you've been informed and you know that going in, but what if this has already happened to you?
Yeah, so there's a complaints process, and what can happen there is that people can go to the Ministry of Labour to complain. But here's the catch. Deena Ladd from the Workers' Action Centre told me that often people don't go through that process because, of course, they can't take the time. They're too busy job searching.
And speaking of job searching, what happened to Stacey and her job search?
Yeah, so Stacey Feldman is still looking for a job. And by the way, I did ask her about that restaurant. She didn't want to reveal the name publicly because she said, they did resolve the situation, but she did tell me the name. And I did some research. The Ministry of Labour tells me that that particular restaurant has only had 2 wage-related complaints against it in the last 5 years.
All right. Surprising that this is happening out there, and now we're just hearing about it, but we'll probably be hearing more now that we've put this out there.
Yeah, we have been already.
Thanks, Steph.
You're welcome.
No one should have to work for free, and it actually, under the employment standards legislation in Ontario, this type of work that's described by the worker in the video is illegal.
We had more questions about this free work situation, so we took them to employment lawyer Daniel Lublin. He explains your rights as a job seeker coming up in about 30 minutes.
I was a waitress and a dishwasher and bartender, you name it. It was the whole kit and caboodle.
Stacey Feldman is raising the alarm about unpaid work. During an interview for a restaurant job, she was asked to work a trial shift for free, and it turns out she's not alone. After we put her story out there this morning, more people got in touch telling us they've also been asked to work for free. In most cases, that is illegal. So what can be done about it? We reached out to Daniel Lublin. He's an employment lawyer with Whitten and Lublin here in Toronto. So, Daniel, what can we do about it?
Thanks for having me. So let's start with the rules. Number one is, for the most part, no one should have to work for free, and it actually, under the employment standards legislation in Ontario, this type of work that's described by the worker in the video is illegal. Unless the program where you've been asked to do an internship is accredited through a university.
It's like a co-op.
Absolutely, or there's a designated program that's done through a school with an accredited degree associated with that. Unpaid internship is not legal. The only other circumstance where someone could work for free is if you've agreed in advance that the company will receive no benefit for this and it's specifically for your training. So it's very vigorous circumstances where the Ministry of Labour will say that you can work for free, but outside of those 2 very narrow exceptions, for the most part, unpaid internships are somewhat of a scam.
It seems that way, and with the job market so tight and people looking for work, people feel like maybe they're being pressured into doing this. So in Stacey's case, the question about, I guess, money didn't come up until after her shift. Should that matter, though?
It doesn't matter in accordance with the law, and you have a certain amount of period of time to file a complaint. But for this unpaid internship to be legal, the employer would have had to say to her in advance, you will not be paid. So it's always a good idea for any worker to talk to the employer in advance and understand what wages you'll be paid. This not happening there, I think, is just part of the shadiness of it.
And how often do you think this happens as an employment lawyer?
I think it comes up a lot. I will say that the Ministry of Labour did a really good job about 6 months to a year ago in an inspection blitz where they were going around to companies around the province and finding out, do you have workers that are in unpaid internships? And let's take a look at the paperwork and see, is this legal, is this legitimate, is it in accordance with the standards we've set? And they focused on certain industries. Advertising, it certainly happens in a lot of advertising agencies. Companies were promising people experience, and they weren't paying for the work, and the Ministry of Labour was saying that is not a legal scenario.
So, I mean, what do I do? Like, if I think an employer is doing this to me, I've gone through this, what are my options then?
So, number one, it's a good idea to complain directly to the employer. Absolutely. A lot of employers know and are aware that they're not acting in accordance with the legislation, and simply someone raising the alarm bell may cause them to come forward in order to avoid a lawsuit or complaint. So raising it with the company threatening to go to the Ministry of Labour is not a bad idea. The second thing is you can file a complaint with the Ministry of Labour for up to 1 year after an incident's occurred. The Ministry of Labour will assign an investigator. That investigator will look into the matter, and oftentimes the Ministry of Labour's investigator can pressure an employer to make payment for unpaid wages without ever having to go to court. So that's a really good scenario for some workers as well. And in the third case is you always have the right to go to small claims court and file a complaint or a claim in small claims court.
That could be costly.
Well, you don't need a lawyer to go to small claims court.
But time and... I mean, I'm afraid that the employer will have legal representation, and you may be in there trying to go up against somebody.
They could, and that's why the Ministry of Labour, working with that approach, you get some of the help that the Ministry of Labour provides, but certainly you have the avenue to go to court if that's what you want to do as well. It's
scary for people, you know, because they need the job, and it seems like some folks out there are taking advantage of them. Daniel, thanks for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Stacey Feldman wrote to us with her story of unpaid work. If you have a story you'd like us to look into or a news tip for us to investigate, get in touch. Email us at torontotips@cbc.ca.